Hi, so today we are going to I'm going to present you with Microsoft Teams interoperability with Azure Communication Services. Okay, so this is the agenda for today's session. So I will be presenting you with what is, where, and how to create an ACS comparison with MS Teams, the ACS flow, pricing, Microsoft Teams interoperability, and the advantages of using this. Okay. So before I start the session, I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm the Cloud Solutions Director at Turn Digital. I'm a Microsoft certified Azure architect, blogger, speaker, and PMP certified professional. I have 17 plus years of experience in this area, mostly in SharePoint, Office 365 development, and right now in Azure. So I'm a Microsoft MVP in Office development. So with that, I'll start with my session, and just to avoid the distraction, I'll just turn off the video and we'll start. Okay, so what is ACS? So if we talk about Azure Communication, so ACS is nothing but Azure Communication Services. Azure Communication Services is Microsoft's latest platform which empowers developers to build communication capabilities within your application. Okay, these are the cloud-based services providing REST APIs and SDKs. So ACS powers workflows or rich communication experiences in websites and applications, allowing to reach customers anytime, anywhere. It's a powerful new service that uses the core fundamental capabilities, use the power of Microsoft Teams, which is used by millions of users every day for video-based meetings, callings, chat. But now this is available through a developer platform. Now, imagine taking the same chat, voice, or video capabilities and making this rich communication experiences available in your application. It comes with its own security layer, very similar to what we have in Teams. So this is very beneficial to developers, typically who are developing applications for the communication modalities. In this, using Azure Communication Services, you do not need a knowledge of real-time networking. You do not need the knowledge of say media encoding. You can actually build a video calling feature on your in your application without having a knowledge of all these complex implementations. So a couple of key important mentions. Let me go here. Okay. So a couple of key important mentions. It includes the ability to bring your own identity and infrastructure. What does that mean? So that means you are not only dependent on your Active Directory or Windows-based identity systems. You can bring your any identity management system and incorporate that, and still you will be able to use the Azure Communication Service. Also, it is consumption-based model. Consumption-based billing. We all know what consumption-based billing is. So you are only paying for what services and what time of service you are using for the time that you are using that service. So all the communications which are happening between the users, those are encrypted to meet the privacy and compliance needs. Compliance needs such as HIPAA and GDPR. So this Azure Communication Services, it enables the human to human connection, human to bot connection, or bot to bot connection as well. You can implement this where two systems can interact with each other, and you can initiate the workflows or power automates and things like that. It offers you group meetings, chat. Users can have, as I said, you can have one-way conversations. They can have, you can keep your chat history. Use informal communications as well. You can send emojis. Not only that, along with that, you can also send the files over the communication. You can directly upload the files, and the files can be shared within the users. And the best part of it, of using the Azure Communication Services, as I said, it is a layer on top of the foundational layers of video encoding and the media encoding, the video layers, because it is developed on top of that. So you can just start using it, or the developers can utilize this service by writing just few lines of code. As I said, there are four aspects, four areas or the four features which are available within Azure Communication Services. You can do a voice and video calling. You can have chat. You can also send SMS, that is messaging features are available. And also there is a telephony or PSTN services where you can procure a number and then make calls. So that this is a real world phone number where this number can make calls to people at the same time, it also can receive the calls, and you can integrate it with your IVRs and bots and so on and so forth. So I'll move to the next slide. So I talked about Microsoft Teams, that this platform is similar to what it is developed on, similar to the same foundational layer of what Teams is built on. So you might wonder or ask me, Abhijeet, why do we need another communication platform where we already have Microsoft Teams, right? So Microsoft, sorry. As we all know, this Microsoft Teams, it is the most common business communication platform these days used by enterprises. It has grown exponentially. There are almost like 250 million monthly active users on this site, on using the Microsoft Teams application. And the key advantage of using Microsoft Teams is that it has deep integration with Office 365. So with all these benefits Microsoft Teams is having, why do we need Azure Communication Services? So here are the four points I would like to give you the reasons why ACS is important even if you have Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft Teams is a product. Okay, you need to download an exe. Once you have downloaded an exe, you will install it, and then the product is available. You can use it for communication. Whereas Azure Communication Service is a service. It is not a tool. It is kind of a service where developer needs to implement it in their application. Only then it can be used. You can't download or start using the service right away. You need to implement it in your application. Now, the second point, the messaging. Imagine with your native Microsoft Teams app, sending SMS to an user or receiving an SMS from the user, and then initiating a workflow, or integrating it with logic apps or any cognitive services. It is right now it is not possible. But if you see with the SMS integration with ACS, you can do that. You can send text messages to people. You can initiate the workflows. You can integrate these with your cognitive services or any other IoT devices. You can do that, which is not available in your Microsoft Teams. Natively, it is not available. Then talking about the interface. So Microsoft Teams has a fixed UI interface. You have on the left hand side, you see Teams, and you can add apps there. And in the center of your screen, you can send messages and post. So this has a fixed interface, whereas using Azure Communication Services, you can develop your own UI layer. You can have your own company branding. You can have your own corporate look and feel to it, and have the buttons or the functionality the way you wanted to improve the usability or have the better user experience. So that is only available within, you can utilize Azure Communication Services to make that happen. Also, the admin management part, where Teams has an admin management. You can restrict users, you can do a number of things with admin management. Whereas Azure Communication Services, you don't have an admin management, because it is directly you go to portal.azure.com and then create a service and then incorporate that service within your within your application. So although it seems similar that both of these you know both of these platforms are similar, do we have the features similar, which is chat features, video features and things like that, but they are made or they have different use cases or the different business scenarios can be addressed using uh, Microsoft Teams versus services. And we are also going to talk about in detail about how these services can be the interoperability between Microsoft Teams and Azure Communication Services. Now we have talked about what is ACS. Okay, so next we will talk about where to use ACS, because I told you a couple of examples and explained you that this is a service and not a product. So where to use this? Let me get to that. Okay, I have three scenarios for you. There might be n business scenarios, but consider these three scenarios. Consider a chronic ill or an elderly, elderly patient who has just being operated or is not able to go to an hospital to meet the nurse practitioner or a doctor just to get some information. Say, you are operated and you have stitches, but you just want to show it to the doctor just to consult with him or get the suggestion on the next steps. In that case, for that person, you have to travel to the doctor, go and take an appointment, wait there, and then finally meet either the nurse practitioner or a doctor, and then just get that small bit of information which uh, might take just 5 or 7 10 minutes. But in this scenario, you have to do that physically, right? So here is the scenario with, I mean, in this scenario can be addressed using Azure Communication Services, because we have different chat model, different communication modalities. You can use the chat service, SMS, schedule a meeting, just have a video call and then get that done. We can do that with the publicly available devices and services, but because this is kind of an the privacy, the security and all those things will not be are not available there. So this is one scenario. Consider another scenario where you have bought from an online retail shop, you have bought an piece of furniture which you are not able to assemble properly, and you feel that some parts are missing, whereas the company has sent you all the details and you are not able to assemble it. Because this might be a small just a communication between or the understanding of how it needs to be installed. A simple video call will help, because they know the customer service executive can help you to actually install it. Whereas in the flip side of it would be like you had to send that product back, or if you're doing it in physically, you have to ship that the entire furniture back to the store or take it back and then install it, right? Give it back or replace it. So this is one scenario. Third scenario is, consider that you have bought a technology savvy, like the latest technology vehicle, and you just bought it to your home and you're not able to say run the windshield or any kind of functionality which is available within the car, you are not able to run it. Whereas now what will happen in the normal cases, okay, you either have to go back to the shop from where you have bought the car, and then the executive there will explain you that what is happening or which buttons to click to have that. You can definitely do that on your access the YouTube channels and see how it is done, but your case might be something different, where you really do not have to, where you would need the experts to look into. So these are kind of scenarios where I feel that Azure Communication Services is the best where it is implemented. The best part, the features for Azure Communication Services where you can use it. Here the user can anonymously call, or can provide the details, and then they can directly interact with the customer service executives which are sitting in the corporate network, communicate with them, and then get the issues resolved. So I talked about the services which are available. So one, we have phone numbers. You can procure phone numbers from Azure Communication Services. You can have group meetings and chats. You can send text messages and then they can integrate it with all the services what we are available. And then you can either do a voice or video over IP calls. Okay, so now we have understood that what is ACS and where to use it. But now comes an implementation part where we would like to understand that how should we create it. Okay, so I'll show a quick demo of how you can create it. I have it here. So you can just go to portal.azure.com and then search for communication. Okay, so this is the communication services. It is available and you can just click on create resource. You need to provide the subscription. You need to provide the resource group. You can okay, you can provide the resource name, the location, and then it can be created. Okay, I'm not going to create it now because I have already created it. I'll show you that directly because it might take few seconds to create. Okay, once you hit on create, a service is created, a service similar to this. So let me go from here. Just to adjust the interface. So you can see that the Azure service, it comes with, there are different properties and configurations which are available. Once you create an Azure Communication Service, you will have the properties, okay, and the configurations which are provided. So the properties which are, so you have different ways how you can integrate your service. You can use it in Logic app. You can have Azure functions. You can create a webhook. A webhook can be created or a webhook can be triggered. You can use it in event hubs and so on and so forth. Here you can also create the, so these are the keys what you have. So when an Azure communication services are created, you need to have the keys and connection strings which are used. So these are the strings and connection strings are used for communication. This you need to put in your application and you can start interacting with this service. You can also create your identities and those identities can be used in your applications. So this is the screen where you can procure the phone numbers. My subscription will not allow me to do that, but that facility is available from here where you can get a phone number and start using it. Some of the features are in preview, but you can have direct routing. The insights are available for this. You can create tasks, different tasks based on once you get notified, or you can have an automation task created. At the same time, you can also have push notifications. You can connect to your notification hub and either send push notifications or receive the push notification and process those using Logic apps or using Power Automate and things like that. Okay, so once this service is created, let me get back to the slide. So once this service is created, we'll understand what is the flow. I mean, how it is incorporated and how exactly does it work into an application. Okay. So consider this, where you are a user accessing the Azure Communication Services through your application. You have your legacy application, and within that legacy application, you will be able to incorporate the Azure Communication Services. Okay, so here, and so your application can be a custom web app, it can be an IoT device, or it can be a mobile app. Okay. So once you create your ACS service the way we have done it, what will happen in that case? Okay, so once you come to your application as a user and you access the application will try to connect to an ACS service, and ACS service will issue an access token. So what this access token is? So this is a sample access token. It is kind of an ID, or it creates a thread with the ID of the user. This is um, not as complex as what we use in Microsoft Graph, the access token, what we use in Microsoft Graph, but it has the information, it has the basic information of when it was created and when it will get expired, and what are the scopes, with this application, because with you need to mention the scopes and then you get an access token for that specific scope. And once you get that, I mean, if you're using an identity management system, say for example, an authenticated user from your application comes into in your site, you can save this identity in the database so that you can track the chat history. But if you want an anonymous communication, you can use this ID and then dispose this ID within the application. And once this access token is created, with this access token, the user will be able to communicate. Okay, let's quickly have a look at what this access token looks like. Okay, I'll show you a demo of that. So I've written an Azure function. So this is a simple Azure function. So what it does is, with this, it creates an object of communication identity using the ACS connection string. The connection string, what we have created here in the application, it is using that connection string. And with that connection string, it is sending the scopes which I mentioned, VoIP and chat. With this communication, it is going to create a token. You are going to get an access token. So this is the URL for that Azure function, and you might see that this is the response what you will get from the once you call this Azure function. This is the response you get, and this is the token you get. I'll just refresh that. So every time you make a call, it is gonna create a different ID. So this ID is gonna change every time, and then you will get a access token. Okay, so this access token, I'll just take it into Jot decoder. And so this is the information what you get from that access token. It is not very complex as it is in Microsoft Graph access token. It just has the information of when it was issued, when it is gonna expire and issued at, and things like that. Say for example, if you take this expired time, you can just put it in here and see that it was just issued. Okay, with GMT time, it is just issued on the Sunday, Jan 23. Okay, so this is how the tokens are generated. Once you get that token created, and once you have the access token, then the communication starts. And then you can make video calls, audio calls based on the scope what you have. Going back to the slide. So every business leader or key IT decision maker will say that, oh, all this is good. You can have integration, you can have chat functionality, videos and all. But what about the pricing? And pricing is an important criteria to make any business decision. So let's talk about the pricing. So if you see, if you're using communication services, either it's an audio or video call, it is charged at 0.004 per user minute. What does that mean? That it is almost like 1,000 minute. You can talk only for $4. Okay, at least 1,000 minutes, that comes to 17 hours. So you can have a video call for 17 hours just for $4. You can use an PSTN leg, and even that is a 0.013 per participant. So once you make a call, it goes for 0.13. For the chat messages, per user message is 0.008. What does that mean? Is like you can have 10,000 messages for just $8. And the best part is if you have an enterprise organization, and if the user from Teams desktop joins either a group meeting or an application where ACS is incorporated, that minutes are not calculated, that minutes are not counted because it is covered as part of your Teams license. So there will be a $0 cost for that. To just give an insight of how this pricing works, I have an example. So say there are three users. One is Alice, Bob, and Charlie. So this call lasted for 60 minutes, but you will not be charged for all the 60 minutes. Okay. Here, Alice and Bob participated in the entire call, whereas Alice turned on her video for 5 minutes and shared her screen for 23 minutes. And the entire call, the whole call was 60 minutes, but the screen sharing, uh, and Bob shared his screen for 12 minutes. So all these based on whatever time it is utilized and whatever minutes they have been interacting, only those minutes will be calculated. And Charlie has left the call after 43 minutes. So once you take a group call, like the cost of this group call, it will be calculated based on the audio minutes, the video minutes, and number of participants who have joined. And you can see that it is the user will be able to, three users are able to communicate between each other. They can have communication for 0.652 per hour. They can have a call, and the costing for this is only 0.6. So this is economically efficient, as well as you will get all the best in class security and all those features what we talked about. So now any session will not be just theory. Let's look into a live demo of how this is implemented and what we need to do to do this, make this happen, and how this ACS service is incorporated. So to do that, I'll have first I'll show the demo and then I'll go through the syntax. Okay, so I have So I have this ASP.NET application implemented, and this is a simple application which creates a thread, the flow which I have explained. It will create an access token. Once that access token is created, it creates a thread, and that thread can be used for multiple users to communicate. Okay, so as soon as this application is ready, once it's loaded, so by the time this application is loaded, let me go back to the syntax and application. Okay, so to implement Azure Communication Service, this is you need an HTML page, and here I have just a simple HTML page where I have a button to start the chat. Okay, and on create thread function is method is called. So what this function will do, it will make a call to create the thread. So this thread is your communication thread which will be created. And once a thread is created, you will have a thread ID, and with that thread ID, you will get an access token. Okay, so generate access token async method is gonna create an object of chat client and create a token. Once you get that token, that information about the token and everything is available in the connection string. With this connection string, you will be able to create an user ID and get the user ID token. And once that token is generated, you will the thread will get created, and that thread the participants can start making calls. Okay, so this application is loaded. So let's start to see this application. Load another window and say we'll start with say. Okay, you can have any of those have implemented. And so Rachel has joined the call. You just need to copy this link, and once I clicked on that start chat button, you might notice in the URL a thread ID is created. Okay, so this is a unique thread ID which is created for this communication. And then we'll add. Okay, So you see here that the user is loaded, and you can see that the client is loaded. You can it's taking more time than expected. I think this was added. Yeah, I'll come back to this in few minutes. Just in the interest of time, I'll just move forward. So Microsoft Teams interop. So that is the important integration between the Azure Communication Services and the uh, Microsoft Teams. Now we have Azure Communication Services where there are lot many business cases what we have. But how can we integrate these applications with Azure Communication Services? So one is that you can have an anonymous user, like any user who has the link can join the meeting and then make a join a Teams meeting, and then can communicate with the corporate network, the user from the corporate network. Okay, so that is one business use case. The second is where the user is authenticated. The user might be authenticated with your Azure Active Directory or any identity management system. With that identity management system, the user will come in, join a Teams meeting, and can directly interact with the corporate user who is part of the network of the enterprise network, who is part of the enterprise network. The user can join either using browser, or they can join using an application which can be implemented using, using the core SDKs or UI SDKs. There are a lot many options available. So this is the flow for that. So either a user with any authenticated user with any identity can join in, or any user who is an anonymous user can join in. These users can also communicate with the bot, or these users can also communicate uh, with the mobile devices. They can join the application and have the meeting. Okay, let me see if I have got this back. So we have this a new user added. This is what Rachel has initiated the discussion with. Hi. So you see that I talked about the foundation on which it has the same foundation on which Microsoft Teams is built. So similar functionality where once the user is typing, you can see that the user is typing from the other user is able to see that the user is typing, as well as when the message is read, you can see that the message is checked. Okay, so you saw that here you get Joe is typing and you also see the message, whereas the user, once they see the message, this is a simple implementation of Azure Communication Services with few lines of code, just writing few lines of code, and you are able to implement an entire application where the two users can have a private conversation between each other without having to consider or go into the networking and understand the complex modalities of how the networking will be or how the encoding of the messages will be done, and so on and so forth. And they can easily leave the application, and all this interface and the look and feel, the CSS are all provided by the Azure Communication Services SDKs. Okay. So going back, I will show you. I talked about the Microsoft interoperability, right? I will show you a demo of how a corporate user will be able to, or an enterprise user, so consider a scenario that you are a customer service executive, and the customer service executive is in his office in the corporate network, and the user who has a problem. We took an example of say a furniture issue, which user has a furniture issue and he wants to communicate uh, with the customer service executive who's in the network. In this scenario, the user might be authenticated, as we said. You can come with user ID, login. He come to your application, log in with user ID, password, and then have that discussion with what he has ordered and all those things. Or he can use an anonymous access and just have that, provide those details of the order he has placed using the chat functionality, and then use the video or video functionalities. So let me show you the demo for that. So this is the application. OK, so I have created a meeting invite, already scheduled a meeting. So the way this will happen is you got an SMS from the user has got an SMS where you have the meeting link. OK, and now user is trying to join the meeting. So as soon as the user is trying to join the meeting, the user is joined. You see the status is updated, and now the user is waiting in the lobby. So you can implement a business process where you can send a communication or a text message to the customer service executive who might not be on his desk or might be on his desk, where a communication is received where he can join the meeting and have discussion with the customer. I have opened multiple browsers, so that's the reason. Maybe it's taking time for it to load, but let me try it once again. Okay. Now I'm logging in as a corporate user, where the corporate user will see that the user is waiting in the lobby, and will join that meeting. Okay, so this is the meeting I have. Okay, and now I'm joining the call. Okay. So here we have the guest is waiting in the lobby now. So this is how the guest will come into the user has logged in, the customer service executive has logged in. He's waiting for the guest, and now the guest can admit the customer service. Yeah. So there will, but you got the understanding of how it works. So the guest will come in here and they will be able to join the call, and then they can have the video call or audio call. You can see that the user is connected from here, and they can also leave the meeting. So once they leave the meeting, they will get disconnected. So this is a small demo of understanding that how a user who might be an anonymous user. So here there was no identification ID or authentication required for the user to come in, and then no, without authentication, the user was able to log into the system to the Teams meeting. And in the Teams meeting, the customer service executive was able to understand, can have a video call, can share the screen, and provide the details to the end user, and the communication can happen, and it will help. So also all the chat history, you can initiate the integrations with logic apps, with Power Automate. All that communication can happen, and the meeting will be successful. So this is how the Azure Communication Services is helpful. I'll just quickly go through the code just to show you that how easy it is to implement it. So a simple HTML page is created where I have two buttons: a join meeting and leave meeting. Okay, in this join meeting, where so the exact and with this JS page, this is a single JS page where all the communication happens. Okay, first when you click on join meeting, what the system does is it calls the access token generator with a unique code. So this code is provided. This is for the security, where the Azure function will get the code, and it will check that this is coming from an trusted source, and it is not coming from any malicious user. So for security, this is the code. This code, you can send a code and then get the access token. Once you get an access token, the call is initiated, where a object is created of call agent, and with that call agent, you are able to join the call. Okay, so this is the meeting link. With this meeting link, you can easily join the call, and the status of the meeting is changed. We saw that it went from disconnected to in lobby to connected, and then disconnected, similar to that. So with few lines of code, with just these few lines of code, you are able to implement an entire application where the customers can directly communicate with your corporate users. Let me get back. Okay, so since the beginning of this call, I have in bits and pieces talked about advantages. I'll just have a summary of advantages what we have for Azure Communication Services. So Azure Communication Services, it is a platform which is offering a full control. This is a platform. It's not a kind of a product. It's a platform. It's a development platform where you can use this service, and you get a full control on the communication system you're going to develop. You can have an UI or with your corporate branding. You can incorporate either chat, either video calling, either text messaging. So you have the control as a developer or organization. You have the control to implement within your legacy application or the application which is already built. You have a mobile application which is already built. You can just add a link or a click into your current application, and these services can be incorporated. The second important advantage is you can utilize your own identities. You need not have to rely on Azure Active Directory or any other system, because if it comes to Teams, you are using Azure Active Directory. You might, but here you have the freedom of using your own identities. It really doesn't matter which identity provider you're using. And the third thing is where you're using a corporate Teams, you have license for each user when they are using it. Here you don't have a monthly license fees.
This service is only when you use it, you pay it. Okay. So that is the greatest advantage I will feel for a small and a medium company, or a company where the kind of user base is very large. There you can't assign the license to each user. So in those kind of business scenarios, I feel that this is an advantage of no monthly license fees. And with this, you have options. With ACS, you have an option to have either server-side implementations. You can use IoTs, you can use your cognitive services, you can use the Azure functions or any kind of services on server side. Also client-side integrations. You can create a JS page, an HTML page, and then start communicating using that. Okay. The main important topic is like it supports the Microsoft Teams interoperability. So I talked about Microsoft Teams being widely used as a business communication platform. Incorporating or having a seamless interoperability really helps here, because any anonymous users can come in, any identified like authenticated users can come in and have a seamless communication between the users. And it supports the support of development SDKs. There are so many features available within the SDKs, and the SDKs are exhaustively implemented so that you need not have to the complexity of heavy lifting. All the heavy lifting is done by the SDKs which are provided. So you can with few lines of code you can have your application up and running. So with that, I would like to summarize that whatever I have explained here. We talked about Azure Communication Service. It's a powerful new service that uses core foundational capabilities used to the same power of Microsoft Teams. It enables the developers to build applications that integrate voice, video call, chat, messaging with the power of Azure. The scalability is not an issue at all here. So with all that power Azure has, with that, this can be seamlessly integrated. And I showed you that with just few minutes, like writing few lines of code, you can have an SMS, video, chat integration within your application. Within your existing application, you can have this integration. You can imagine after doing this integration that for this further opens up all sorts of business scenarios. This is kind of a game changing, specifically the interoperability between Microsoft Teams and Azure Communication Services, because there are n number of business cases which can be implemented using these features. Just for an example, like you can have an Azure Cognitive Services. You can integrate this with your Azure Cognitive Services for, say, for live transcription. If two users are just talking in different languages, you can have live, just integrate it with your Azure Cognitive Services, the translation services, and you can have live transcription so that the communication happens seamlessly and with economically, efficiently, and with the platform of security or best-in-class security which is implemented by Microsoft 365. So I have explored this. I'm really excited about the interoperability and the Azure Communication Services. I hope that this session would have given you some insights about the Microsoft Teams interoperability and Azure Communication Services, and there might be n number of business cases out there. So I wish that with this information, you should be able to at least get a head start and start exploring about these services. So I have referred to these resources, and you can definitely go to these links. There is Microsoft MVP Tom Morgan, who has an entire series of Azure Communication Services and all other links which are available. So I would request you to explore this if you would like to get more insights or more information for these services. So with that, I'll conclude my session. And if you have any questions, feedback, I'll be happy to answer.